My name is Susanne Mühleisen. I'm Professor of English Linguistics at Bayreuth University, and I'm a principal investigator at the Cluster of Excellence Africa Multiple. I'm in the research section learning, and I have a short-term project at the moment. The name of my short-term project is Advice as Practical Epistemology in Multilingual Africa, an analysis of expert user and user-user contexts in Cameroon. And it's a short-term project. It started out in October 2019. It was actually intended to be just for 1 year, but due to the corona crisis, it was extended until September 2021. So it's still running, but almost finished. The title suggests the project is situated as a question on speech activities in the multilingual context, how people negotiate in their everyday life, something like the speech activity of advice giving and advice receiving. This is also part of everyday learning experiences, and it's also an important part of the social organization and transfer of knowledge of what is called practical epistemology in everyday life. So the research project focuses on facets of learning and also learning resistance in the context of advice giving and advice receiving in especially multilingual Cameroon, but also extending to other multilingual African situations and in the African diaspora, for instance, in Jamaica. First of all, of course, I work in English linguistics. I'm interested in languages, and most African contexts are ideally suited for experiences of multilingual contexts. And I would say that especially in a country like Cameroon, you have a hierarchical relationship also between languages, between something like an ex-colonial language like English, then you have a contact variety like Pidgin, then you have 270 or more local languages, and you have also something like urban contact varieties like Anglais, and so on. So there is, and French, of course. Did I forget French? So it's actually a hugely interesting situation. And for me, the way people in such a multilingual situation negotiate between the languages and to see what the relationship between the languages is just fascinating. And I think it's also something that is important for the cluster's questions. So I think that's my main motivation. I've collected several sets of data, partly experimental data like survey questionnaires that are then analyzed. They were conducted in Cameroon, and so here we also have the possibility to look at advice giving in more personal situations. But I also have a set of media data, something like radio phone-in programs, which are then carefully transcribed and analyzed by means of, discourse analysis methods. And I also have other mediated data that I've collected, plus I've collected more data also in the African diaspora context in Jamaica, and that data consists again of radio phone-in programs plus newspaper advice columns, and that's basically my database. The data analysis has brought forth a number of research articles that are presently in press or in the final stages of completion. And okay, I think one really interesting point for me was the level of directness with which advice is performed, especially by the advice giver, and especially in situations where the advice recipient seeks advice, right? In solicited advice situations, where actually the performance of the advice would be much more direct, for instance, with an imperative. Do this, do that. Not mitigated by something, if I were you, I would do this or that, you know? And the second thing that I found very interesting, especially in the transcribed data, in the media data, in radio phone-ins, is that often the use of multilingual codes is organized around activities of advice or other speech activities that basically something that is an authoritative speech act like advice then triggers the switch from one language to another. And so you can really see that in the careful transcriptions, and that was also something that I thought was really interesting. Well, multiplicity is already given in the multiple use of languages, and I think that's a very, very important point of the project, and also something that I would like to also contribute to the cluster. The investigation of multiple language use in African contexts. And the relationality is also very much reflected here in that these languages do not stand innocently side by side, but also are in a particular relationship with one another, which also reflects the post-colonial situation in many of the African contexts, and particularly Cameroon, and also to a certain extent Kenya, where I've also done preliminary research on that. Are very good examples of that, of how multiplicity, relationality then are also situated in the clusters project here. I would say that the multilingual situation in most African contexts also invites more projects on that. And I have, well, after finishing this short-term project, I have plans to conduct a long-term project with a postdoctoral researcher in Kenya, again situated within the learning research section. And that would also look at the use of multiple languages in the Kenyan classroom, especially for primary students, primary school students, and especially at a time when the language of instruction then changes from the local language to English. And also, of course, here you have an extremely interesting situation with Swahili, English, and a large number of local languages. And of course, that also has consequences for the learning. Okay, so my vision is to conduct more research in these areas and to contribute to the cluster as a linguist, but also as a linguistic anthropologist that I would see myself as.